um, what what do you believe? And sometimes we'll notice, I know I have, that we believe something that we wish we didn't. Welcome to the Double Rainbow Podcast, where we uncover the timeless connections between medicine, magic, spirituality, and the mysteries of the universe.
We bring together spiritual practitioners to share their knowledge and wisdom for the benefit of the collective.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Double Rainbow Podcast. I'm Raven.
And I'm Olive.
And in the last episode, we talked about channeling and Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. Basically, we talked about cults, red flags in the spiritual community. We gave some examples there. It is so fascinating. If you haven't checked that out, please go there first. You are going to be hooked. It's an incredible story, and we revealed a lot about it. And now in this episode, we want to talk about spiritual discernment.
And it's so easy to do. And so if you're like, wait, what is discernment? Like, what is that? What are you guys talking about?
It's a hard word to speak in the English language. Like it's a whole concept, you know?
And if you look it up online, which you'll find a lot of, is actually talking about discernment within the context of Christianity.
Yes.
So just a little background, like what do we mean when we're talking about discernment? So we are talking about kind of this concept of spiritual judgment. And it's not judgment about casting judgment, but it's about deciding what energy, what information you will and won't work with. What is the energy and information that you're going to support, associate yourself with, intake? It's about how you determine what's authentic and in ethical alignment, because that's important, okay? It's not just about being authentic. It's also, is this information, is this energy ethical? Because there's authentic energy that is not ethical.
Yeah.
So, this will strengthen with your spiritual practice. And I also highly suggest really contemplating your values and beliefs in terms of spirituality and spiritual ethics. So everybody's discernment's going to look a little bit different. There are certain things that, we're all going to, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to agree on, and there's certain things that we aren't. So it's kind of this personal compass that you have to figure out for yourself. Trusted elders, trusted people on the spiritual path can set good example for you, but at the end of the day, you need to explore this yourself. So this discernment's going to be important when you're both intaking channel content, when you're reading or watching, whatever, but also if you decide or if you're already personally practicing channeling.
I think what can hold you back from that too, I was just thinking about the Judgment tarot card and stuff, about some people are really afraid that when they've gained this belief system, this value system, because it's hard to develop it and create it and formulate in your body. They have a really hard time with the idea of possibly releasing it, starting over, letting go of their belief and value systems in order to incorporate something new. So I think that it's really hard for these people when it starts to shift, like maybe someone that was in the School of Enlightenment before. As the values start to shift, it's tough because you're like, I just spent 10 years building this belief system. How do I break this down? You know what I mean? How is this possible? Because I truly do think you have to constantly be ever changing your belief and value system. So I just found that really, I totally was thinking about that while you were talking.
And you had a really good insight as well about when you're just starting your spiritual path.
When you first jump in, you pretty much think that nothing can touch you. I mean, I thought I was invincible. I felt like if everything was love and light, that the vibrations, it couldn't reach me. I couldn't possibly connect with a negative entity or have misinformation. And it's just not true. And that's what we want to talk about with you guys. That's the whole point of this.
Everybody's integration process is different. And I think like what you're saying is so true. That's a lot of people's process when they first start getting into spirituality, or integrating with their spirit, whatever you want to call it. For other people, what I experienced a lot of was actually the opposite of really being dragged through your shit, having an awful time. So it just depends. It's highly variable, but that is one way. And I know a lot of people do start off that way, the very bright-eyed, version. And like you said, and you had mentioned to me earlier that when people are on that path, they assume that the world of spirituality is just this big happy playground, and that anybody who's on the same path is going to be of this love and light, and everything's good and we can just trust each other. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And one thing that I really wanted to bring through in this discussion is and connecting, channeling with how this leads into cult like behavior and things to watch out for, is that, in we have lost our community. Many of us have lost our community, and we don't have a strong communal connection. We have also lost our connection with spirit due to this loss of connection with community. And so a lot of us, we have this need to feel connected. And so that will lead us to this kind of innocent viewpoint. And that will thus lead us to falling prey to some of these cult like groups. And that is where discernment is going to come in very strongly and is super important, because we are vulnerable. A lot of us are vulnerable to this type of thing. So having that measured approach of, really looking at things for what they are instead of just getting wrapped up into the initial feeling is really important. And so Reva has some good questions she actually made, and these could be like journaling prompts,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, so that you can start considering your own discernment process.
Yeah, and I think that like really if you want to break down spiritual discernment, it's a really true self-reflection of what you, like you said, what you want to align with. So there's some questions that you could be asking yourself are, what do you really want? How deep are you willing to go? What are your true motivations? That one is that one has layers to it. Really, all of discernment is layer after layer of what do you believe? And sometimes we'll notice, I know I have, that we believe something that we wish we didn't believe, that there is something inside of us
Mm-hmm.
that is not ideal, not something you want to own up to, but it's with yourself. And that's how you become better at spiritual discernment, is really just like owning up to your shit to yourself. um,
Totally.
and that is not easy to do. That's what, I think
No.
call it shadow work. But really what the shadow does is it reflects the light so that you can see yourself, and
Mm.
you got to see yourself for who you are. And it's okay that maybe you fall into certain words easily, that these cult like behaviors are comforting to you, that like you said, it gives you
Yeah,
a sense of community. Oh my gosh, I belong. That's one of
I
the,
belong.
I belong. um
And in the specific context of channeling, and discernment with channeling, is when you're considering your motivations, when you're considering your intent, um do you have a pure intention
right.
with what you're doing? Because a lot of the times it's very easy, especially, when we're feeling really excited, we just want to do it because it's cool, or we just want to do it to see what happens. Okay, recipe for disaster. Do you have a pure intention behind channeling? My personal thing is, are you centering safety and trust? If you're not, I would consider that. Is the channeler that you're watching or you're taking in information from channeling safety and trust? What is their intention? What is the intention behind the spiritual content that I am consuming?
Yeah. And I love that word consuming, because you are intaking, um, because knowledge is light and information. You are intaking these photons, these data packets, and they are merging with you. And so you had this really good point about how to not merge energetically, really, without a conversation first. Can you explain that? Because it's a
Totally. So, for a little background, I do divination for others. So, I practice channeling personally. And so, what I've learned from other great teachers and also from the energies I work with and my own truth inside is that when you go into channeling, you do not immediately need to merge with an entity. Okay, think of it more as a conversation that you're having with this energy or with this entity, and not a melding, right? So you can stay within yourself and interpret this energy or this entity and get these messages without fully inviting them into your field and fully inviting them into your body. Because think about it. Would you just let a random person come in your house that you've never met before and you really don't know anything about them? There's kind of this interview process that you can go through, and you can work with energies without honestly ever having to fully let them in that sort of a way. And you can be more of the, you can be that medium, you can be that bridge that brings the message. You don't have to fully leave your body and let them take over. So if you do practice channeling or would like to practice channeling, that's something to keep in mind. And it's just as valid, and it's also less dangerous because, this isn't to stir up fear or anything like that. This is just a reality of channeling, is that a lot of the spirits that want to talk, a lot of the entities that want to talk, they might not be ones you want to talk to, and they might not be on the best mission, and you don't want to mix your energy with them. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking about this as well, that in the past, for people to channel, they really went through some hoops here. Like, you know way more about this than me, but you didn't just wake up and channel, like you said.
Right. So, I mean, think about traditionally, and this is in cultures and societies all over the world. I'll use the word shaman, even though that's not what people use, for their own practices, but I think we all kind of get the gist of what that is. So, if you're practicing shamanism, if you're the high priest, if you're the high priestess, if you're the channeler in the community, you didn't just wake up and do that. There is a long process. There's initiation, there is healing, there's all of these things that go into acting as that channel for the community. And I'm not trying to gatekeep channeling and saying that you shouldn't do it, but it's important to keep that in mind, that there's this high level of respect, there's a high level of responsibility that comes with the practice of channeling, which essentially is just, letting other energies into your energy body and letting that energy come through you and that message come through you. So, like I said, this isn't to gatekeep channeling, but it's important to keep in mind why in so many of our societies has this position of channeling been so esteemed, you know, because it is a great practice, and it's difficult, and it requires a lot of discernment at the end of the
Right.
day.
And even with that, if you're watching someone, a channeler, say Ramtha, we didn't really get to see her own healing journey, his own healing journey. Like, we
Right.
don't even know that they're practicing what they're preaching. And so, one of like the main red flags there is that the channeler is not on their own journey. They're not taking you along the journey. They're just telling you how to achieve something. So that's a really good one right there, especially coming from like my background as a witch. Covens that are not working on the collective evolution of the coven and are not working on their own evolution. They're purely just teaching, esoteric occult information. I think that that's a little bit of a red flag as well, of maybe just self-reflecting on, is this the community I want to be a part of, where there is no learning, no self-learning, no self-reflection going on,
Right. That's a really interesting point, because the process, the individual process is really important in whatever practice you do.
Yeah.
And, going back to channeling, it's going to be even more important, because if you say that you're presenting this channeled information, you have to realize that it's being filtered through you. So where are you at?
Yeah.
Do you have, beliefs and biases? And we all do, but like, how strong are your beliefs and your biases that this information is going to be coming through? And that's going to affect our trust in other channelers, and so if we're not seeing them being vulnerable and explicit about their own process and their own healing journey and their own path, and being honest, about their own imperfections, that's a huge red flag, because the information that we're getting is being filtered through us. And that's just something to keep in mind when channeling as well. If it's something, if you're channeling some information that's related to some of your own traumas or some of your own pains, be a little more discerning with that information and look at how might my trauma or how might my pain have affected how I interpreted that information.
Yeah. And
Just a question.
sometimes like when I first started noticing that, it was actually kind of quite the opposite, where um I would read something that was like either channeled or real, whatever. And I would have like a reaction to it. And obviously, it was unaware of this reaction. It was subconscious, but it was basically, I would put up a wall like, nope, this isn't valid. Um,
Yes.
and then when I started to reflect on some of these concepts, I realized, whoa, I have some distortion here regarding this belief. And then I kind of worked my way backwards, to whatever point in time that was that belief system began, that I began thinking these thoughts and validating them. So really, it's kind of, if you're searching for validation, that might be a red flag. Or if it's not giving you the validation that you want, and it's frustrating you or it's pissing you off, those are all markers for you to recognize that your beliefs and values are significantly filtering the spiritual information you're getting.
Yeah, great point. And yet that's always a time to go deeper and ask why, because it might honestly be that information is shit. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that could be why you're feeling that way, or like Raven was saying, it's just triggering.
yeah.
It's triggering some of your belief systems.
Yeah, and it's there to show you that that belief system exists, because it's really hard for us to really know until it's presented, it comes into contact with another energy, and then you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that I held that belief the whole time." You know what I mean?
Totally. Totally. So, just some tips and tricks for discernment, and just another reminder, and we brought this up a little bit in the first episode, but if you are consuming channeled content, you don't need to subscribe to every single thing that is in that text or in that video or that person believes. Okay, it's okay to pick and choose some things to learn from and to let other things go. You don't have to take it all the time.
Take what resonates, leave the rest. That's why you hear it all the time. You do not have to take the whole enchilada. You can just have a little side dish.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a good nugget, that's a good little valuable, piece of information. And then the rest of it can be shit. You know what I mean? It's really what resonates, and just making sure that you're resonating with what you want to be resonating with. Kind of where you were going back to, what do I want to align with? You know what I mean? What do I want to be a part of?
What's in alignment with me?
Yeah.
Like it's as simple as that. And so on the other hand, if you want to do more channeling yourself, and you want to work that into your practice or see what that's like, we have a few ideas and or some guidance on how you could do that. So one thing is, if you want to get into channeling in terms of mediumship, so you want to channel loved ones who've passed away, a good place to start is looking up evidential mediumship, okay? So you can take classes on this, you can learn about this online. So what is evidential mediumship? So this is about you're knowing who you're channeling and knowing who you're working with. So they teach you skills to get that evidence from the energies, from the entities, from the spirits, so that you're bringing through the messages that are actually relevant and that are of that person that you want to be channeling. So you're not just an open, book for literally anything to write on. It's getting that connection that you're actually seeking or that needs to come through. So evidential mediumship is a good place to start. If you're looking into other forms of channeling, automatic writing.
I love automatic writing. That's one of my favorites, and I actually do it like with clients, where I'll just start scribbling, like, and then all of a sudden the words will come to me or things like that. But automatic writing is really great because it's not, like you said, this direct contact. You're really just practicing being a channel. You're really just practicing leaning into the information that you're collecting in your spiritual body. So a lot of the times the stuff that comes out, it doesn't honestly make sense that much, but as you can begin to practice, you can kind of sense what it feels like to be in alignment with the source, what it feels like to be getting safe information, if that makes any sense. So you can start to
Totally.
identify the difference in the feelings. Like for example, I just have one quick story. I forgot to tell you this. This was in the beginning of my time, my spiritual journey, and I was meditating in my brain, like visualizing sitting in a circle with my ancestors and stuff. And all of a sudden, something weird came through, and I kept asking it what it was, and it wasn't telling me what it was. But at that time, I didn't really know what to do. And so I continued to stay in the circle as it was like
Oh,
circle. And at that minute, literally at 2 o'clock in the morning in a campground, I woke up in that second to a cop going through my campground with a flashlight. And I asked him why he was going through my campground. And he said that my car light was on. He just wanted to make sure I was okay. So yeah, it was wild. So since then, I really
suspicious.
have, if the entity is like not telling me what it is, then I'm just like, then I don't need to have this conversation. You know what I mean? Um,
A hundred
because
percent.
yeah, it was a really bad feeling, and I don't want to feel that way ever again. So I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is to how your body's reacting. Like if your pulse is going up, if you're feeling fear, if you're feeling these kind of low vibration type of things.
And automatic writing is a good intro to that. And if you don't know what that is or we haven't explained it, so it's basically a writing practice. So you get a journal, and you just start writing. So I want to say you want to set the intention beforehand, set the space right, get your energy right, put your intention for why you're channeling. But then you let it flow. Okay. And it's going to get better with practice because you'll see when you go back through the writing, you'll start to see what came from you and what didn't. And that it's not the same as I forget. There's another like psychological term of like free writing or something like that, and it's similar, but it's not that. So that's about kind of like channeling yourself almost or like
Stream of
your deeper
consciousness, like stream.
what'd you call it?
It's called stream of
Stream of conscious.
yeah,
Yeah, stream of consciousness. So it's not that.
yeah,
It's actually like allowing to channeled information to come through the pen.
yeah.
And so you'll get a good sense, like Raven is saying, for the changes in your body, for the changes in your energy,
Even your
um,
handwriting,
even the handwriting.
yeah, the handwriting for me gets like it'll be like totally normal, and then I'm like, that is not my handwriting.
Yeah.
Or it'll be
And
like angular, like very like all of a sudden it starts to make geometric shapes instead of like, or it'll go flowy. It depends on you. It depends on your energy and all that. So really establishing the practice within yourself, not looking online. Like, what does it mean when this happens? It's
exactly.
really creating this space within yourself of, okay, every time that this I get this feeling, my writing starts to change and the wording that I use is different, or establishing that within yourself and your own practice without any outside influence.
Super important. Super important. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And two more little things I just want to mention. One is if you're just starting channeling, some advice that I have and a good little practice to start with is set the intention of trying to channel or not trying to of channeling pure love energy. Okay, you can't go wrong with this. You can't go wrong with this. You can go wrong with channeling loved ones sometimes. You can go wrong with some other things, but this isn't something you can go wrong with. And it'll give you that practice of how to get in the state to channel, what it feels like, getting out of it, all of those things. But it's really, there's no damage, here with that. On the other hand, if you've been channeling for a while, just something that I want to mention, from personal experience is that as you continue to channel, you will continue to be challenged. Um, like Raven said earlier, you think that, oh, I'm vibrating love and light. Nothing's gonna hurt me. Nothing's gonna touch me. As you go deeper in this practice, the things you will experience will become weirder. It just will. You will encounter things that at one point maybe you thought wasn't even possible. So just know that it's not like this one hump that you get over. Oh, I fixed all my fears, and now I'm just this perfect channel. It's a constant learning process. It's a constant process of doing it one way or connecting with this, then connecting with that. And if things come into your space, if entities or energies come into your space that aren't in alignment, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong all of the time. They're looking for a connection. You're open to connect. It's your job and the job of the spirit helpers you work with to direct them. Okay? Just a little thought to leave you with.
That was gold right there for sure. I couldn't agree
Thank you.
with you. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode on channeling and spiritual discernment. What do we have coming up in the next episode? I'm so excited.
Yeah, so in the next episode, we are doing an interview with one of my dear friends and also a sacred medicine practitioner, Everest Bond. He is a Mexican American who has learned from a few different traditions in terms of being a steward of sacred plant medicine and a guide in medicine space. So we're really looking forward to that interview for him to share some really amazing wisdom and so that we can ask some pretty out there questions.
I'm so excited. I think that this is only going to get weirder, guys. So
So stay with us.
yeah, stay with us. We're going down the rabbit hole together. It's going to be awesome. Well, I'm Raven.
And I'm Olive, and this is the Double Rainbow Podcast. Support us by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.